Most people think mental strength is built in the morning. They're completely wrong. Marcus Aurelius knew 2,000 years ago that true resilience is forged in the final hours before sleep, and his 7 nightly principles can transform your mental fortitude in just 21 days. Have you ever found yourself lying in bed, tossing and turning, while your mind seems to accelerate precisely when it should be slowing down? The room is dark, the world outside is quiet, but inside your head there's a whirlwind. That presentation tomorrow, the bill you forgot to pay, the strange comment your boss made, and somehow your mind manages to resurrect that embarrassing situation from 5 years ago that no one else remembers. Except you. You're not alone. A recent study showed that 68% of adults report difficulty sleeping at least 3 nights a week, with anxious thoughts being the primary cause. What should be a period of rest and recovery becomes just another source of stress. The most fascinating thing? This isn't exclusively a modern problem. Marcus Aurelius, the powerful Roman emperor who ruled virtually the entire known world in the 2nd century, wrote extensively about his nightly struggles with the mind. In his personal diaries, which were never intended for publication, now known as Meditations, he revealed, "At night, when you lie down to sleep, tell yourself the problems that kept me anxious during the day are not mine to solve during the hours intended for rest." Imagine that, the most powerful man in the world, commander of legions, with power of life and death over millions, lying in his imperial bed, tormented by the same anxiety that keeps you awake today. Or consider Seneca, advisor to emperors, and one of the richest men in Rome. He suffered from panic attacks so severe that he contemplated suicide in his youth. However, he developed a nightly reflection system that transformed his mind. "When the light goes out and my wife falls silent, aware of my habit," he wrote, "I examine my entire day, reviewing my actions and words. I hide nothing from myself, I ignore nothing." And then we have Epictetus, who began life as a slave. Literally the property of another person, with no control over his body or external circumstances, he developed nightly mental practices that allowed him to maintain an unshakable inner freedom. "People seek retreats in the countryside, at the beach, in the mountains," he observed, "but you can, at any moment, retreat within yourself, especially before sleep." Think about it. If these men, facing wars, plagues, exiles, and extreme uncertainties, managed to develop an unshakable peace of mind through specific nightly practices, what could these same techniques do for you, who face modern pressures, but have infinitely more comfort and security than they ever knew? What I'm about to share with you isn't philosophy in the academic and boring sense of the word. It's a mental operating system developed 2,000 years ago and refined through the centuries, specifically designed for real people facing real challenges. Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions or enduring suffering. It's about reprogramming your response to stress in a systematic and proven way. And it all begins with what you do in the last hours before sleep. In the next few minutes, I'll reveal 7 nightly practices that the Stoics used to ensure not just deeper sleep, but a more resilient mind upon waking. The most impressive part? Modern neuroscience confirms that these specific techniques literally reconfigure your brain in just 30 days. Are you ready to begin this transformation today? The first and most powerful nightly practice is what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control, which I call the 2 lists technique that saves your sanity. It's surprisingly simple. Before lying down, take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On one side, list everything that's worrying you that's under your control. On the other, what's worrying you but is completely beyond your reach. Try it right now. Pause this video for 30 seconds and mentally separate 2 of your concerns. One that you can influence and another that's outside your control. Studies show that this simple exercise reduces the activity of the amygdala, the brain region responsible for the fight or flight response, by up to 62%. Why? Because you're giving your brain clear instructions about where to focus its energy. Carlos, a manager who was fired after 12 years at the same company, started doing this practice every night. In the first week, I realized I was spending 80% of my mental energy on things I couldn't change: the economy, the company's decision, age bias in the job market. After 21 days focusing only on what I could control, my resume, my network, my skills, I got 3 interviews and a better offer than my previous job. The second technique, premeditatio malorum, or premeditation of evils, works like a psychological vaccine. Spend 3 minutes before sleep calmly visualizing what could go wrong tomorrow. Not to worry, but to prepare. It's like your mental immune system. By exposing yourself to a small controlled dose of the virus, potential problems, you develop emotional antibodies. Anna, a single mother of 2, used this technique every night during the pandemic when she feared losing her job. I would visualize receiving the news of being laid off, feel the emotional impact for a moment, and then mentally rehearse my next practical steps. When the layoff actually happened, my boss was shocked by my calmness. I had already lived that moment 50 times in my mind and was prepared. The third practice is the daily review, a 5-minute process where you examine your behaviors, decisions, and reactions of the day without judgment, just with curiosity. When I lost patience with that client, what was really happening with me? What triggered that reaction? How can I respond better next time? The power of this practice is that it creates a separation between you and your automatic behaviors. You begin to notice patterns. I get irritated when I'm hungry. I tend to procrastinate after lunch. I check my phone when I feel insecure. A Harvard Business School study found that employees who did this practice for 15 minutes at the end of the day had a 23% increase in productivity after 10 days, compared to groups that just reflected on work in general. The fourth practice isn't just listing good things. It's much deeper. The Stoics practiced contemplation of loss. Before sleep, choose something you take for granted, your vision, your partner, your job, even running water, and vividly imagine what it would be like to lose it. It's not to generate fear, but to awaken a genuine sense of wonder for what already exists. As Seneca wrote, "Consider everything you have as borrowed, and enjoy it as would a traveler who must move on." Roberto, an executive at a multinational, started practicing this after a health scare. Every night, I spend 30 seconds imagining what it would be like not to be able to see my daughter's face. When I open my eyes, the gratitude I feel isn't superficial. It's a deep tremor of appreciation that literally changes my physiological state. I sleep better and wake up with different energy. The fifth practice is to contemplate, for just 1 minute before sleep, the finite nature of life. This seems morbid to our modern culture, but the Stoics understood that remembering our mortality is the most powerful clarifier of priorities. It's not about fear, it's about focus. It's asking, if I knew I had limited time, would I be worried about what concerns me now? Would I be investing my energy where I'm investing it? Studies show that regular contemplation of mortality is linked to greater generosity, less materialism, and greater life satisfaction. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." The sixth technique involves giving specific instructions to your brain before sleep. During sleep, your brain processes and consolidates information. The Stoics used this to their advantage. Before falling asleep, formulate a specific question or intention. How can I solve that problem in the project? I want to wake up with energy and purpose, or how can I be more patient with my child? Your brain will work on these questions while you sleep. This is why so many creative solutions emerge during the night or right upon waking. Teresa, a teacher, used this technique to deal with a particularly challenging student. I would formulate the question, how can I connect with João in a way that he responds positively? Before sleep. One morning, I woke up with a clear idea about using his interest in dinosaurs as a gateway to mathematics. It completely transformed our dynamic. The seventh and final practice is what the Stoics called the view from above. Before falling asleep, imagine yourself floating above your house, seeing it from above. Then continue rising, seeing your neighborhood, your city, your country, the planet, until you reach the stars. This practice literally recalibrates your sense of importance. The problems that seemed huge when you were lying in bed, that argument at work, the offensive comment, the financial worry, are put into cosmic perspective. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Think of the immensity of time past and of time future. Near this, how long is the life of a human being? A mere point in infinity." Now that you know the 7 practices, let's structure how to implement them in your life in a realistic and progressive way, starting tonight. During the first week, don't try to apply all the techniques at once. Start with the most fundamental, the dichotomy of control. For 7 nights, before sleep, make the mental or physical separation between what you can and cannot control. In this phase, your only goal is to observe your mental patterns. How did you react when someone cut in front of you in traffic? How did you feel when your partner made that comment? When you received that email from your boss, where did your mind go first? Install a reminder on your phone for 9 o'clock with the message, "What is under my control now?" This simple prompt interrupts the autopilot and creates a moment of awareness. Each night, spend 2 minutes writing a line about what you learned. It doesn't need to be elaborate. Marcus Aurelius wrote his reflections in extreme conditions, often during military campaigns. If he could do it, you can too. In the second phase, we'll add 3 more practices: the daily review, the mental preparation, and the Stoic gratitude. Establish a simple 10-minute sequence. 3 minutes to review your day without judgment, 3 minutes to contemplate something you value and could lose, 4 minutes to formulate a question or intention for your brain to work on during sleep. This is the phase where you'll probably encounter resistance. Your mind will say, "This isn't working," or "I'm too tired today." This is exactly the moment when the mental muscle is being built. Roberto, a salesman who implemented these practices, says, "In the second week, I thought I was wasting time. In the third, I began to notice that I wasn't taking work problems home anymore. In the fourth, my sales numbers started to rise because I was more present with customers, less distracted by anxieties." Mariana, who had been taking anxiety medication for years, noticed more subtle changes. "It wasn't that the anxiety magically disappeared, it was that I began to have a different relationship with it. I could observe it coming and not be completely dominated. After 45 days, my doctor reduced my medication for the first time in 5 years." In the final phase, we incorporate the 2 remaining practices, the memento mori and the cosmic zoom. Now your complete nightly routine of 15 minutes is established. 3 minutes for the dichotomy of control, 3 minutes for the daily review, 2 minutes for Stoic gratitude, 2 minutes for the memento mori, 3 minutes for the cosmic zoom, 2 minutes for the mental preparation. It's in this phase that the practices begin to merge naturally. You will no longer be doing Stoicism. You'll simply be operating in a different way. It's like learning to drive. At first, every movement is conscious and awkward. After a month, you drive while talking and listening to music. The practice becomes second nature. Imagine waking up and, instead of that familiar wave of anxiety, feeling a tranquil clarity. Not because your problems disappeared, but because your relationship with them has fundamentally changed. The first signs of transformation usually come from others. You're different, they'll say. Calmer. Something has changed in you. The impact extends to all areas of your life. At work, you begin to distinguish between real and artificial urgencies. When that email with urgent in the subject arrives at 6 o'clock on Friday evening, you assess with clarity, does this really need to be resolved now, or is it someone's anxiety being transferred to me? In relationships, you respond instead of react. When your partner makes that comment that would normally trigger an argument, you can perceive, this is my insecurity being activated, not a real attack. Physically, your body begins to relax. The chronic tension in your shoulders decreases. Sleep improves. Many practitioners report reduction in headaches, digestive problems, and other stress-related symptoms. To maintain this transformation, integrate Stoicism into your modern life. Digital Stoicism. Transform notifications into Stoic reminders. When your phone vibrates, before checking it, ask, is this under my control? What is the broader perspective here? Community. Connect with other practitioners. There are online groups, apps like Daily Stoicism and The Stoic, and excellent books such as The Art of Living by Epictetus, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and Enchiridion by Epictetus. Maintenance. After the initial 30 days, you can reduce to a simplified practice of 5 to 7 minutes per night, maintaining the essential elements that resonated most with you. Now that you understand what Stoicism really is, let's explore the most fundamental technique that Epictetus taught, a simple two-list exercise that, according to his students, produced almost immediate results. This specific technique is transforming lives even today, and you can apply it to your biggest challenges in less than 5 minutes. Have you ever noticed how much mental energy you waste every day on things completely beyond your control? That meeting that got rescheduled for the 3rd time, the traffic that made you late, the weather that ruined your plans, that offhand comment from your colleague that keeps replaying in your mind. Most of us spend hours each day mentally wrestling with situations we have absolutely no power to change. Epictetus, who began life as a slave and ended as one of history's most profound teachers, understood this problem intimately. Some things are within our power, while others are not, he wrote. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. This simple distinction, what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control, is possibly the most powerful mental tool you'll ever learn. I call it the two lists technique that saves your sanity. Let me show you how it works. Take a piece of paper right now, or imagine one if you're on the move, and draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write within my control. On the right side, write outside my control. Now think about something that's been bothering you recently. Perhaps it's a project at work, a relationship issue, a health concern, or financial stress. Break that situation down into specific elements and sort them into the appropriate columns. Let's say you're worried about a presentation you need to give tomorrow. What's within your control? Your preparation, your practice, your rest tonight, your focus during delivery. What's outside your control? How your audience will react. Technical glitches that might occur, whether your boss will be in a good mood, or if someone asks an impossible question. Try this exercise right now. Pause for 30 seconds and mentally sort one of your current worries into these two categories. The power of this practice is immediate. Research shows that this simple exercise reduces activity in the amygdala, your brain's alarm system, by up to 62%. Why? Because you're giving your brain clear instructions about where to focus its limited energy. When you clearly identify what's within your control, two things happen simultaneously. First, You stop wasting precious mental resources on things you cannot influence. Second, you channel that reclaimed energy toward the things you actually can change. It's like closing dozens of unnecessary apps running in the background of your mental smartphone, immediately boosting performance and battery life. Michael, a manager who was laid off after 12 years at the same company, started doing this practice every night. In the first week, I realized I was spending 80% of my mental energy on things I couldn't change: the economy, the company's decision, age bias in the job market. After 21 days focusing only on what I could control, my resume, my network, my skills, I landed 3 interviews and an offer better than my previous job. But the dichotomy of control isn't just for major life challenges. It's perhaps even more valuable for the daily irritations that collectively drain our mental energy. Think about that driver who cut you off this morning. Your natural reaction was probably frustration or anger. But let's apply the dichotomy of control. What was within your control? Your attention to the road? Your following distance? Your reaction time? What was outside your control? The other driver's behavior, their hurry, their driving skills. Once you make this distinction, something remarkable happens. Your emotional reaction diminishes because you realize it's irrational to be upset about something you never had control over in the first place. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The beauty of this technique is its versatility. It works equally well for minor annoyances and major life crises. Rebecca, a mother of 3, uses it when her children's behavior frustrates her. I realized I have control over the boundaries I set, the examples I provide, and how I respond. I don't have control over their moods, their developmental stages, or how quickly they learn. This simple distinction has made me a more patient parent. James, who suffered from chronic anxiety, applied it to his health concerns. I have control over my diet, exercise, sleep habits, and doctor appointments. I don't have control over my genetic predispositions or how fast my body heals. This realization alone reduced my anxiety by half. But let me address an objection you might be having right now. You might be thinking, this seems too simple to be effective with my complex problems. Or perhaps, but I need to care about things outside my control. That's part of being human. These are valid concerns, and the Stoics anticipated them. The dichotomy of control isn't about becoming indifferent or disengaged. It's about engaging more effectively by focusing your energy where it can actually make a difference. As Epictetus explained, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Notice he doesn't say, ignore the rest or don't care about the rest. He says, take it as it happens, acknowledge it, but don't waste your limited mental resources fighting against it. Think of it like swimming in the ocean. You can't control the waves, tides, or currents. Getting angry at the ocean for being the ocean would be absurd. But you can control your swimming technique, where you enter the water and when you decide to get out. A skilled swimmer works with the ocean's forces rather than fighting against them. Let's practice applying this to a common modern scenario: social media anxiety. Imagine you posted something and it's not getting the reaction you hoped for. What's within your control? The content you create when you choose to check responses, how you interpret feedback, whether you let likes and comments define your worth. What's outside your control? The algorithms, other people's reactions, whether someone saw your post, what mood they were in when they did. Once you make this distinction, you can focus on creating content you're proud of, rather than chasing external validation you can't control anyway. The dichotomy of control becomes especially powerful when applied consistently over time. I recommend establishing it as a nightly ritual. Before bed, take 2 minutes to mentally sort the day's events and tomorrow's concerns into these 2 categories. This practice literally reprograms your brain to automatically filter situations this way. A useful framework is what I call the 10-10-10 test. Will this matter in 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years? Most things that seem important in the moment fail this test spectacularly. As Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Let me share a practical tip for implementing this in daily life. Create 2 simple questions as your default response to stress. What part of this situation can I control? And what specific action can I take right now? These questions redirect your mind from passive worry to active problem solving. Laura, an executive who incorporated this practice, shares, "I keep a small notebook with a line down the middle. Every night I sort my concerns into the 2 columns. After a month, I noticed patterns. I was consistently worrying about the same things outside my control. Seeing this pattern made those worries lose power over me." Robert, who struggled with perfectionism, found freedom through this practice. "I realized I was trying to control how others perceived my work, which is impossible. Now I focus solely on the quality of my effort and preparation, then let go of the results. My work has actually improved because I'm no longer paralyzed by anxiety about reception." There's a profound paradox at work here. By focusing only on what you can control, you actually gain more influence over your life as a whole. This happens because you stop squandering your limited mental and emotional resources on the impossible task of controlling the uncontrollable. I want to address a common misconception about this practice. Some people think the dichotomy of control is about emotionally detaching from outcomes or not caring about results. That's not the case at all. The Stoics cared deeply about contributing positively to the world. The key distinction is that they attach their sense of success not to external outcomes, but to the quality of their choices and actions. Marcus Aurelius, as emperor, certainly cared about the welfare of Rome, but he focused on making the best decisions he could with the information available, rather than worrying about factors beyond his influence. This mental clarity allowed him to lead effectively during crises like war and plague. The practical application for us is simple but profound. Redefine success as giving your best effort toward what matters, rather than achieving specific external results. This shift alone can transform your relationship with work, relationships, and personal goals. Let's practice this right now with something relevant to your life. Think about a goal you're currently pursuing. It could be professional advancement, a fitness target, learning a new skill, or improving a relationship. Take 30 seconds to mentally separate what's within your control from what isn't. Did you notice how this mental sorting creates immediate clarity? Most people report feeling a weight lift from their shoulders when they realize how many aspects of their concerns are actually not their responsibility to control. The dichotomy of control can be particularly transformative during major life transitions. Sarah used it during her divorce. "I made 2 lists, what I could control, my responses, legal preparation, self-care, and what I couldn't. My ex's behavior, the court's timeline, others' opinions. Focusing exclusively on my list gave me back a sense of agency during a time when everything felt chaotic." To integrate this practice into your daily life, I recommend 3 specific approaches. First, the morning preview. As you begin your day, take 60 seconds to identify the areas where your efforts will have the most impact. Second, the spot check. When you feel stress rising during the day, pause and ask, what part of this is within my control right now? Third, the evening review. Before sleep, sort the day's events and tomorrow's concerns into your 2 mental columns. Over time, this practice becomes automatic. Your brain begins to instinctively filter situations through this lens, saving you enormous amounts of mental energy that can be redirected toward what truly matters in your life. As you master the dichotomy of control, you'll notice something remarkable. The things genuinely within your control are also the things most essential to a well-lived life. Your values, your responses, your attention, your efforts. These are the true determinants of your experience. Now that you've mastered the dichotomy of control, you're ready for one of the most powerful and counterintuitive practices in Stoicism, the premeditatio malorum. This technique, which seems to defy common sense, was the secret that allowed Seneca to face exile and the loss of his entire fortune with a serenity that impressed even his enemies, and most surprisingly, it transforms fears into strengths. Now that you can clearly distinguish between what you can and cannot control, you're ready to explore what might initially seem like the most counterintuitive of all Stoic practices. It's called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This powerful technique served as Seneca's psychological armor, allowing him to face exile, loss of fortune, and even death threats with remarkable composure. But wait, doesn't thinking about negative possibilities just make us more anxious? Isn't this the opposite of positive thinking that we're often told to practice? Here's the fascinating paradox. Deliberately contemplating potential difficulties actually reduces anxiety rather than increasing it. Think of it as a psychological vaccine. Just as a vaccine introduces a small controlled dose of a pathogen to build immunity, the premeditatio malorum exposes your mind to small doses of adversity to build emotional resilience. Seneca explained it this way: "He who foresees calamity suffers it twice, but the man who only looks out for his affairs when they come receives an injury undiminished, but weakened by its unexpectedness." In modern terms, he's saying that being blindsided by problems hits harder than facing difficulties you've mentally rehearsed. It's the difference between being suddenly pushed into cold water versus gradually wading in. Same water, completely different experience. Let me show you how this works in practice. Tonight, before you sleep, take 3 minutes to calmly visualize what might go wrong tomorrow. Perhaps you have an important presentation. Imagine your slides failing, your mind going blank, tough questions being asked. Don't dwell in anxiety. Simply acknowledge these possibilities and mentally rehearse how you would respond. If my slides fail, I'll continue with what I know. If I blank on a point, I'll pause, take a breath, and move to the next section. If someone asks a challenging question, I'll acknowledge its validity and offer to follow up if I don't have the answer immediately. Anna, a single mother of 2, used this technique every night during the pandemic when she feared losing her job. I would visualize receiving the layoff news, feel the emotional impact for a moment, and then mentally rehearse my practical next steps. When the layoff actually happened, my boss was shocked by my calmness. I had already lived that moment 50 times in my mind and was prepared. The key difference between harmful worry and effective premeditation lies in your approach. Worry is passive, repetitive thinking about problems without solutions. Premeditation is active, structured thinking that includes response planning. One depletes your energy, the other builds your resilience. This distinction is crucial. You're not visualizing negative scenarios to indulge anxiety, but to remove its power through preparation. As Marcus Aurelius advised, begin each day by telling yourself, "Today I shall meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." This wasn't pessimism, it was tactical readiness. Modern psychology confirms this wisdom. Studies on defensive pessimism show that people who mentally rehearse potential challenges perform better than both chronic worriers and blind optimists. Why? Because they transform vague fears into specific scenarios they can prepare for. Let's put this into practice with a simple exercise. Think about something you're anxious about in the coming week. Close your eyes for 15 seconds and visualize one specific thing that could go wrong. Now, instead of stopping at the problem, imagine exactly how you would respond. What would be your first action? What resources would you call upon? Did you notice how different that feels from typical worry? There's a sense of agency and preparation rather than helplessness. David, a sales executive, used this technique before client meetings. I used to be blindsided when prospects raised objections. Now I deliberately visualize the 3 toughest questions I might face and plan my responses. Not only am I more prepared, but my anxiety has decreased because there are fewer unknowns. The premeditatio malorum works because it addresses 3 psychological vulnerabilities. First, it reduces the uncertainty premium, the extra anxiety we feel about the unknown. By making potential problems concrete, they become less frightening. Second, it builds response flexibility. Mental rehearsal creates neural pathways for solutions before you need them. Third, it creates psychological distance. By viewing potential problems in advance, you separate yourself from the emotional reactivity they would otherwise trigger. This practice isn't limited to professional challenges. It's equally powerful for personal situations. Julia used it before visiting her critical in-laws. I visualize the 3 most hurtful comments my mother-in-law might make and rehearse responding with calm boundaries instead of defensiveness. This preparation allows me to be present during the visit instead of anxiously waiting for the next criticism. But I know what you might be thinking. Won't focusing on negative possibilities just make me more negative? This is a reasonable concern, but the research shows something interesting. Brief, structured negative visualization followed by solution planning actually increases optimism rather than diminishing it. This is because you're not just dwelling on problems, you're building confidence in your ability to handle them. As Seneca wrote, "The soul that is within me no man can degrade." He understood that by mentally rehearsing his response to adversity, he strengthened his conviction that he could maintain his dignity under any circumstances. Let me offer a practical framework for effective premeditation without falling into anxiety. First, set a specific time limit. 3 minutes is ideal. This prevents the practice from expanding into rumination. Second, be concrete rather than vague. What if my presentation fails? Is too general. What if my opening slide doesn't load? Is specific enough to generate a useful response plan. Third, always end with action steps. The formula is potential problem, initial feeling, specific response. Fourth, maintain emotional distance. Visualize the scenario as if watching a movie of yourself, not from first-person perspective. This subtle shift reduces emotional reactivity. Maria, a teacher, used this technique to deal with a particularly challenging student. Every night, I would visualize one potential disruption John might cause the next day. Rather than just worrying about it, I'd mentally rehearse first acknowledging my frustration, then responding with calm redirection instead of escalation. After 2 weeks, not only was I handling disruptions better, but they were occurring less frequently because I wasn't feeding into the pattern. The beauty of premeditatio malorum is how it transforms your relationship with uncertainty. Most anxiety stems from our intolerance of the unknown. By deliberately engaging with potential difficulties, you develop what the Stoics called the inner citadel, a core of calm that remains unshaken regardless of external circumstances. Think about how children approach uncertainty. When faced with something new, they often ask, "What if it's scary?" Wise parents don't just say, "It won't be scary." They say, "Even if it is scary, I'll be right there with you, and here's what we'll do." This is exactly what you're doing with the premeditation of evils, not denying potential difficulties, but empowering yourself to face them. Michael, who struggled with health anxiety, transformed his relationship with medical appointments. Instead of spending weeks in vague dread before checkups, I specifically visualize receiving concerning news. I feel the initial fear, then mentally rehearse asking clarifying questions, getting second opinions, and researching treatment options. This concrete preparation has reduced my pre-appointment anxiety by at least 70%. The Premeditatio Malorum also offers a surprising side benefit: enhanced gratitude. When you regularly consider how things could go wrong, you develop greater appreciation when they go right. This isn't theoretical. Research shows that people who practice negative visualization report higher levels of gratitude and life satisfaction. Robert began this practice after a health scare. Every night, I spend 30 seconds imagining what it would be like not to be able to see my daughter's face. When I open my eyes, the gratitude I feel isn't superficial. It's a deep tremor of appreciation that literally changes my physiological state. I sleep better and wake with different energy. For maximum benefit, I recommend integrating this practice into your evening routine. The formula is simple. Spend 3 minutes identifying 1 to 3 specific challenges you might face tomorrow. For each challenge, visualize your initial emotional reaction without judgment. Then mentally rehearse your ideal response, not what you'd instinctively do, but what your wisest self would do. End by reminding yourself, I've now prepared for these possibilities. If they happen, I'm ready. If they don't, that's even better. This structure ensures you're not reinforcing anxiety, but building resilience. As Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. The Premeditatio Malorum is deliberate practice for responding well. I want to address another common concern. Won't constantly thinking about what could go wrong make me pessimistic or paranoid? This is where discipline comes in. The premeditation of evils is a contained practice, 3 to 5 minutes at a specific time. It's not meant to become a lifestyle of constant negative scanning. Think of it like a fire drill. You don't spend all day every day thinking about fires, but periodic drills ensure you know exactly what to do if one occurs. This bounded practice actually frees you from needing to worry throughout the day because you've already addressed potential problems during your designated time. Elena, who used to lie awake worrying, created a worry appointment using this technique. Instead of random anxieties ambushing me throughout the day and night, I schedule 5 minutes at 7 p.m. to visualize potential problems and plan responses. When worries arise outside that time, I literally tell them, I'll deal with you at 7. This has reclaimed countless hours of mental peace. The Premeditatio Malorum is particularly valuable in our culture of toxic positivity. We're often told to just think positive or don't worry about it, advice that invalidates legitimate concerns and leaves us unprepared for life's inevitable challenges. The Stoics offered a more balanced approach, clear-eyed realism paired with confidence in our inner resources. As Seneca wrote after losing his wealth and being exiled, I was preparing myself to endure with calmness what has happened, for wide and varied fortune must be variously met. His preparation didn't prevent hardship, but it preserved his dignity and peace of mind through it. This practice becomes especially powerful when combined with the dichotomy of control we explored earlier. When visualizing potential difficulties, sort aspects into what you can and cannot control. This prevents the premeditation from becoming overwhelming by focusing your mental rehearsal on actionable responses rather than circumstances beyond your influence. Start small with this practice. Tonight, choose one situation from tomorrow that generates mild anxiety. Spend 2 minutes visualizing what might go wrong and planning your response. Notice how different this feels from typical worry. There's a directedness, a purposefulness that worry lacks. Over time, you can gradually apply this to larger concerns. Some practitioners find it helpful to keep a pre-meditation journal where they record potential challenges and their planned responses. Reviewing this periodically reveals patterns in your concerns and builds confidence as you see how many anticipated problems never materialized or were handled successfully when they did. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate uncertainty from life. That's impossible. The goal is to develop such confidence in your ability to respond to whatever happens that uncertainty loses its power to disturb your peace of mind. Now that you've learned how to prepare for future challenges, we're ready to explore a practice that transforms your relationship with the present moment. It's called the internal observer, a method that Marcus Aurelius practiced every morning, allowing you to separate yourself from the emotional whirlwind and see situations with absolute clarity, even in life's most chaotic moments. Now that you've mastered the art of preparing for future challenges, let's explore a practice that fundamentally transforms how you experience the present moment itself. This technique is what made Marcus Aurelius remarkably calm amidst the chaos of leading an empire during war and plague. He called it the internal observer, a method of creating distance between your essential self and the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions that so often hijack our minds. Think about the last time you were completely overwhelmed by an emotion, perhaps anger when someone cut you off in traffic, anxiety before an important presentation, or hurt feelings after a misunderstanding with someone you care about. In those moments, you weren't experiencing the emotion. You became the emotion. There was no space between you and the feeling. It's as if you were wearing colored glasses but had forgotten you were wearing them, so everything you saw was tinted by that emotional state. What the Stoics discovered is remarkably powerful. You can create a small gap between yourself and your thoughts or emotions, not to suppress them, but to observe them with curiosity instead of being consumed by them. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his personal journal, "When jarred by circumstances, immediately return to yourself and don't lose the rhythm for longer than you can help it. You'll have greater mastery over harmony if you keep going back to it." Let me show you how this works in practice. Right now, wherever you are, take a moment to notice a thought or feeling you're currently experiencing. Perhaps you're slightly distracted, worried about something, or feeling a physical sensation like hunger or fatigue. Now, instead of saying "I am distracted" or "I am worried," rephrase it as "I notice I'm experiencing distraction," or "I observe worry arising in my mind." Feel the subtle but profound difference? In the first phrasing, you identify completely with the state. In the second, you create a small space that allows you to see the thought or feeling as a temporary experience passing through your awareness rather than defining who you are. This is the essence of the internal observer technique, stepping back just enough to witness your mental experiences without being completely absorbed by them. It's like being able to stand on the riverbank to watch thoughts flow by instead of being swept away in the current. Emily, a surgeon who practices this technique, describes its impact. Before a challenging operation, anxiety would completely take over. My hands would shake, my thinking would narrow. Now I observe the anxiety. I notice nervous thoughts arising. This tiny shift gives me room to acknowledge the feeling without being controlled by it. My hands stay steady, and I can access all my training and experience. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics intuited. This practice of mental distancing activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function, while reducing activity in the amygdala, your emotional alarm system. In simple terms, you're strengthening the wise observer part of your brain while creating space from the reactive, impulsive parts. Let's try another quick exercise to experience this directly. Think of a minor frustration you've encountered recently. Maybe someone was late for a meeting, your computer was slow, or a store was out of something you wanted. First, notice how you naturally describe this situation in your mind. Was it something like, "That was so annoying," or "I was really frustrated"? Now, rephrase it using observer language. I notice I felt frustration when that happened. Or, I observed annoyance arising in response to that situation. Again, feel the difference? You're not denying the emotion, you're just relating to it differently. The power of this subtle shift extends far beyond minor irritations. David, who struggled with debilitating social anxiety, transformed his experience using this technique. Before giving presentations, my inner dialogue was, I'm terrified, I can't do this. Now I think, I notice anxiety is present. This creates just enough space for me to function alongside the feeling rather than being paralyzed by it. I've gone from avoiding speaking at all costs to volunteering for opportunities. Epictetus, who began life as a slave, taught this principle with remarkable clarity. Make it your study to draw a line between yourself and the externals. Distinguish between impressions and say, you are just an impression and not at all what you appear to be. He understood that most of our suffering comes not from events themselves, but from our automatic reactions and interpretations of those events. This perspective shift is particularly valuable in conflicts. When someone says something hurtful, our automatic response is to become defensive or counterattack. The internal observer allows you to pause and think, I notice I'm feeling hurt and wanting to lash out. That's an understandable reaction, but not the only possible response. Sarah used this approach to transform a difficult relationship with her teenage son. When he would make dismissive comments, I used to immediately feel rejected and respond with anger. Now I can observe those feelings arising without immediately acting on them. This creates space for me to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. Our whole dynamic has changed. The Stoics developed a specific practice called speaking in the third person to strengthen this capacity. When facing a challenging situation, they would describe their reactions using their own name. Marcus is feeling frustrated right now, rather than I am frustrated. Research from Michigan State University found that this simple linguistic shift reduces emotional reactivity and improves performance under pressure. You can try this right now with something that's been bothering you. Instead of, I'm worried about that deadline, say to yourself, your name is experiencing worry about the deadline. Notice how this creates immediate perspective and helps you see that the worry is something you're experiencing, not who you are. This technique becomes especially powerful with digital communication. Before responding to that triggering email or social media comment, practice the 5-second pause. I notice I'm feeling defensive and want to respond immediately. I'm observing the urge to justify myself. This tiny gap often prevents reactions you'll later regret. Thomas, a manager, credits this practice with transforming his leadership. I used to immediately respond to every crisis email, often escalating tension. Now I observe my initial reaction, usually anxiety and urgency, before deciding how to respond. I ask myself, is this truly urgent or just presented as urgent? What response would be most helpful? My team says I've become remarkably calm and clear in high-pressure situations. A powerful variation of the internal observer technique is what the Stoics called the spectator exercise. When facing a challenging situation, imagine you're watching it happen to someone else, a friend you care about. What would you notice about their situation that they might miss while caught up in the emotion? What advice would you give them? Lisa applied this during her divorce. When I was caught in hurt and anger, everything felt personal and overwhelming. When I imagined I was watching a friend go through the same situation, I could suddenly see options and perspective that were invisible before. I could see that some reactions from my ex weren't about me at all, but about his own struggles. The internal observer isn't about becoming detached or emotionless. Quite the opposite. It's about developing a healthier relationship with your full range of emotions. As Seneca wrote, the wise person is not without emotions, but masters emotions. The goal is to feel everything, but not be controlled by those feelings. This practice requires consistent training. One effective method is the passing cloud technique. Throughout your day, especially when emotions arise strongly, visualize them as clouds passing through the sky of your awareness. You, the observer, are the vast, unchanging sky. Emotions, thoughts, and sensations are just weather patterns moving through. Sometimes stormy, sometimes gentle, but always temporary. Start with small irritations before applying this to stronger emotions. When your phone battery dies at an inconvenient moment, practice thinking, "I notice frustration arising." It's an understandable reaction, but just one of many possible responses to this situation. As you build this muscle with minor annoyances, you'll find it increasingly available during more significant challenges. Mark, an emergency responder, uses this technique in crisis situations. When arriving at accident scenes, I quickly check in with my internal state. I notice anxiety and urgency present. This brief acknowledgement prevents those feelings from narrowing my perception or rushing my assessment. I remain present with difficult emotions without being hijacked by them. For lasting benefit, consider keeping an observer's journal. Each evening, record situations where you became emotionally reactive, noting what happened, how I reacted automatically, what I was thinking, and what I was feeling. Don't judge these reactions. Simply observe them with curiosity. Over time, you'll notice patterns in what triggers you and how those reactions typically unfold. The beauty of the internal observer is that it's always available, requiring no special environment or equipment. Whether you're in a heated meeting, stuck in traffic, or having a difficult conversation, you always have the capacity to create that tiny but crucial gap between stimulus and response. As Viktor Frankl famously said, echoing Stoic wisdom, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. One significant benefit many practitioners report is reduced rumination, that endless replaying of negative events. When unwelcome thoughts keep returning, the internal observer allows you to think, "I notice my mind is replaying that conversation again, rather than getting caught in the content of the thoughts themselves." This simple shift often breaks the cycle of rumination that keeps us stuck. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate emotions or become some kind of detached, robotic observer. The Stoics valued the full spectrum of human experience. The aim is to develop the capacity to be with all your emotions, pleasant and unpleasant, without being completely defined or controlled by them. This is true emotional intelligence. As you practice the internal observer in daily life, you'll discover something remarkable. The you that observes thoughts and emotions remains constant despite the ever-changing mental weather. This stable center of awareness is what the Stoics considered our essential nature, the part of us capable of wisdom, choice, and virtue regardless of circumstances. Now that you've learned how to create distance between yourself and your internal reactions, we're ready to expand this perspective even further to the cosmic level. The next practice we'll explore is what the Stoics called the view from above. This powerful exercise allowed them to instantly transform seemingly huge problems into minor inconveniences. When you learn the cosmic zoom technique, you'll see how concerns that appear monumental can diminish to insignificance in seconds. With this new understanding of your internal landscape, it's time to expand your perspective dramatically outward. The Stoics practiced a powerful technique they called the view from above, a mental exercise that instantly transforms how you perceive your problems by placing them in their true cosmic context. Think of it as the ultimate zoom-out feature for your mind. Have you ever been completely absorbed in a problem, perhaps a conflict at work or a personal disappointment, only to later realize how minor it actually was in the grand scheme of things? This moment of clarity usually comes by accident, perhaps when looking at the stars or standing by the ocean. The Stoics discovered they could intentionally create this perspective shift at will without waiting for a spontaneous moment of insight. Marcus Aurelius regularly practiced this technique amidst the crushing pressures of imperial leadership. He wrote, "Consider yourself to be dead and to have completed your life up to the present time. Then, from nature's store, take what remains and live it properly." In another passage, he suggested, "Survey the circling stars as though yourself were in mid-course with them." This cosmic perspective isn't about making you feel insignificant in a negative sense. It's about freeing you from the prison of narrow thinking. Let me guide you through this practice now. Close your eyes for just 10 seconds and imagine floating upward from where you're sitting. See yourself from 10 feet above. Now continue rising, viewing your neighborhood, your city, the continent, until you see the entire Earth as a blue marble in space. Notice how your current concerns appear from this height. What did you notice? Most people report an immediate sense of spaciousness and calm. The problems that seemed all-consuming moments ago suddenly appear much smaller, not because they've disappeared, but because they've been properly sized. This technique works through what psychologists call decentering, the ability to step outside your default perspective and see situations in broader context. Research shows this mental skill significantly reduces rumination and emotional reactivity while improving decision-making quality. To make this practice concrete, let's apply the 5-scale perspective technique. Think of a current challenge you're facing. Now, consider it through 5 expanding time frames. How important will this seem 1 week from now? How important will this seem 1 year from now? How important will this seem 5 years from now? How important will this seem when you're very old, looking back on your life? How important will this seem in the context of human history? Rebecca, a marketing executive, used this technique when her major presentation failed due to technical issues. "I was devastated in the moment. But applying the 5 scales, I realized this wouldn't even register as a memory in 5 years. From the perspective of my whole life, it was insignificant. This immediate reframing allowed me to respond professionally rather than emotionally, which actually impressed my colleagues more than a perfect presentation would have." The cosmic perspective is particularly valuable for decision-making when you're too emotionally close to a situation. When facing a difficult choice, try the timeline technique. Visualize yourself 5 years before this moment and 5 years after. How does the decision look from those vantage points? This temporal distance often reveals priorities that are invisible when you're caught in the immediate emotional intensity. James, who was agonizing over whether to accept a job offer in another city, found clarity through this exercise. From 5 years in the future, I could see that what initially seemed like terrifying uncertainty was actually a pivotal growth opportunity. The specific anxieties that consumed me weren't even memorable from that perspective, only the courage it took to make the leap. The Stoics understood something paradoxical about human psychology. Recognizing our cosmic insignificance doesn't lead to despair, it leads to freedom. When you truly internalize how brief and small your existence is against the backdrop of the universe, petty concerns and social anxieties lose their power. As Seneca noted, "Place before your eyes the vast spread of time's abyss and consider the universe, and then contrast our so-called human life with infinity." Let's try another brief exercise. Think about something someone said that offended or hurt you recently. Now zoom out and imagine viewing Earth from space. Somewhere on that tiny blue dot, 2 collections of atoms momentarily vibrated air molecules at each other. From this perspective, can you feel the emotional charge beginning to dissolve? This isn't about invalidating your feelings, It's about having choice in how much power you give them. The cosmic perspective gives you that choice. The one among billions technique extends this practice further. When facing personal criticism or rejection, remember that you are one of nearly 8 billion humans currently alive, who are themselves just the latest moment in a species that has existed for 300,000 years, on a planet that's 4 billion years old, in a universe that's 13 billion years old. Does that single critical comment still carry the same weight? Thomas, who struggled with perfectionism, found this perspective transformative. When I make a mistake, I now think I'm one of billions of humans who made a mistake today. This isn't lowering my standards, it's recognizing my fundamental humanity. The relief is immediate, and I actually recover and improve faster without the crushing self-judgment. The cosmic perspective doesn't mean you should never care about anything. The Stoics weren't advocates of apathy, they were passionate participants in life. The key insight is distinguishing between matters that deserve your full emotional investment and those that don't. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How ridiculous and how strange to be surprised at anything which happens in life." Crisis leaders intuitively apply this principle. During emergencies, they maintain what psychologists call dual awareness, fully engaged with the immediate situation while simultaneously holding the broader perspective that prevents panic or tunnel vision. You can develop this same capacity in daily life. The "and then what" technique helps apply cosmic perspective to worry. When anxiety arises about a situation, ask yourself, "And then what would happen?" Then keep asking after each answer until you reach the end of the consequence chain. Most worry chains either lead to outcomes that are manageable or so unlikely they're not worth the mental energy. Sarah used this technique to overcome paralyzing career anxiety. "I was terrified of making a presentation mistake. I asked, 'And then what?' I might be embarrassed. And then what? My boss might think less of me. And then what? I might miss a promotion. And then what? I'd have to find opportunities elsewhere." Following the chain to its end revealed that even the worst-case scenario was something I could handle. The overwhelming anxiety dissolved. Perfectionism particularly benefits from cosmic perspective. Next time you're agonizing over details that few will notice, try the universal insignificance test. Ask, "In 100 years, will anyone remember or care about this?" For most daily concerns, the honest answer is no. This isn't depressing, it's liberating. It frees you to focus on what truly matters: your character, your relationships, how you treat others. Robert, a writer who would spend weeks agonizing over single paragraphs, transformed his productivity with this approach. "I realized I was treating each sentence as if civilization depended on its perfection. From the cosmic perspective, even if my entire book is forgotten in 50 years, as most are, what matters is that I created with integrity and communicated something meaningful while I could." To integrate cosmic perspective into daily life, create perspective triggers, small reminders that prompt an instant mental zoom out. Some people use images of Earth from space as phone backgrounds. Others keep a small stone that's millions of years old on their desk. One executive I know has a note inside his wallet that simply says "cosmic perspective" that he sees whenever he's about to make a purchase. The power of this practice compounds over time. You'll find yourself automatically zooming out when emotions begin to escalate, creating that crucial space between stimulus and response that we discussed earlier. Start with small daily irritations. Practice cosmic perspective when stuck in traffic or dealing with minor inconveniences. This builds the mental muscle that will be available during major challenges. Elena, who previously reacted strongly to co-worker conflicts, describes the change. "When tension arises in meetings, I silently picture Earth from space for just a second. I can still see the issue clearly, but without the emotional magnification that used to make every disagreement feel like a personal battle. I now respond with appropriate concern rather than disproportionate intensity. The cosmic perspective pairs powerfully with the dichotomy of control we explored earlier. When you zoom out, you naturally see more clearly which elements of a situation are within your control and which aren't. This combination of practices creates remarkable mental clarity, even in complex, emotionally charged situations. There's a beautiful paradox at the heart of the cosmic perspective. By recognizing your smallness in the universe, you actually expand your mental freedom and capacity. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How small a part of the boundless and unfathomable time is assigned to every man, for it is very soon swallowed up in the eternal." Rather than finding this depressing, the Stoics found it profoundly focusing. If your time is incredibly brief against the cosmic timeline, then how you use your attention becomes your most important choice. The cosmic perspective doesn't diminish the significance of your actions. It clarifies which actions are truly significant. Daniel, who was consumed with career advancement, had a revelation through this practice. I realized I was sacrificing my health, relationships, and inner peace for achievements that wouldn't even register as a microscopic dot in the cosmos. This wasn't discouraging, it was clarifying. I still work hard, but my definition of success completely transformed. Now I measure it by the quality of my character and relationships rather than external markers. The cosmic perspective ultimately leads to a profound question. If your time here is so brief, what do you want it to mean? What qualities do you want to embody? How do you want to treat others during your momentary appearance on this cosmic stage? Now that you can view any problem from its proper perspective, we're ready to explore the nighttime practice that transformed Seneca's life, the evening review. This simple 5-minute ritual has the power to literally reprogram your brain while you sleep, creating a cycle of continuous improvement that accelerates over time. With the cosmic perspective now giving you the ability to see your problems in their true proportion, it's time to explore one of the most transformative practices in Stoicism, one that occurs not at the beginning of your day, but at its conclusion. This 5-minute evening ritual was the cornerstone of Seneca's mental training and holds the remarkable power to reprogram your mind while you sleep. Seneca described this practice in his essay, On Anger. "When the day is over and night has come, I conduct a review of my entire day. I hide nothing from myself. I pass nothing by. For why should I fear any consequence from my mistakes when I can say, 'See that you don't do it again, I forgive you now'?" This evening review, what I call the mental mirror, is perhaps the most underrated tool for personal growth ever developed. Unlike modern approaches that often focus on positive thinking alone, the Stoic evening review embraces both what went well and what didn't, creating a balanced self-awareness that leads to genuine improvement. Here's how it works. Each night before sleep, carve out 5 minutes to mentally replay your day, examining your actions, reactions, and decisions, not with harsh judgment, but with curious, compassionate attention. Ask yourself, what did I do well today? Where did I fall short of my principles? What could I improve tomorrow? The key distinction that makes this practice so powerful is the difference between guilt and responsibility. Guilt says, "I am bad," a self-defeating identification with mistakes. Responsibility says, "That action didn't align with my values, and I can do better next time." One crushes your spirit, the other empowers growth. Try this right now. Think of one interaction from today that didn't go as well as you hoped. First, notice your default self-talk about it. Is it critical? "I always mess this up," or constructive? "I notice I interrupted twice when I was feeling defensive." Now, imagine reviewing this interaction with the curiosity of a scientist rather than the criticism of a judge. What do you notice? Modern neuroscience helps explain why this evening practice is so effective. When you review experiences before sleep, you're essentially flagging them for your brain to process during the consolidation that happens while you rest. Studies show that learning followed by sleep leads to stronger neural connections than the same learning without sleep afterward. You're literally programming your brain's overnight work. Mark, a manager who struggled with impatience, began using the evening review after particularly challenging days. Instead of just feeling bad about losing my temper, I would carefully examine what happened right before. I noticed I was most reactive when interrupted during focused work. This specific awareness allowed me to implement a simple solution: a do not disturb sign when I needed concentration. My impatient reactions decreased by 70% in 3 weeks. To make this practice most effective, approach it through what the Stoics called the benevolent observer perspective, the same internal witness we cultivated in our earlier practice, but now applied to reviewing your day. You're not beating yourself up. You're helping yourself improve with the kind care you would offer a good friend. Let me guide you through the 3-filter method that makes this review structured rather than rambling. First, identify what you did well, moments when you lived according to your values. Second, recognize where you fell short, without excuse or justification. Third, determine specifically what you can improve tomorrow. This balanced approach prevents both complacency and self-criticism. The power of specific questions far exceeds general reflection. Instead of vaguely reviewing your day, ask targeted questions like, when did I react rather than respond today? When did I waste energy on matters outside my control? Where did I miss an opportunity to practice virtue? These precise prompts generate actionable insights rather than vague impressions. Jennifer discovered the power of specific questions in her evening review. Instead of general reflection, I started asking, when did I speak from insecurity rather than conviction today? This revealed a pattern. I would use undermining phrases like, this might be a stupid idea, but in meetings with certain colleagues, once I saw the pattern, I could change it. Now I track my progress each evening, and my confidence in those situations has completely transformed. The evening review becomes especially powerful when you use it to identify emotional triggers, those specific situations, words, or circumstances that consistently knock you off balance. By reviewing with curiosity rather than judgment, patterns become visible. I notice I get defensive when asked about deadlines, or I tend to procrastinate after checking email. Thomas, who struggled with angry outbursts, used the evening review to map his triggers. After 2 weeks of nightly reviews, I realized my anger usually erupted around 5 in the afternoon when I was hungry and tired. It wasn't about the final straw incidents that seemed to cause it. Those were just triggers hitting at vulnerable times. Now, I have a small protein snack at 4:30, and my family has noticed a dramatic difference in my evening mood. A particularly powerful variation is the contrast method, comparing your actual behavior with your ideal. Rather than getting discouraged by this gap, use it as a precise measurement tool. The Stoics viewed this contrast not as evidence of failure, but as valuable feedback for growth. As Epictetus advised, when you do anything from a clear judgment that it ought to be done, never shrink from being seen to do it, even though the world should misunderstand it. To make this practice sustainable, structure it as a 5-minute ritual with clear components. First, 60 seconds reviewing victories, however small. Second, 60 seconds identifying moments of misalignment with your values. Third, 60 seconds recognizing patterns or triggers. Fourth, 60 seconds planning specific improvements for tomorrow. Finally, 60 seconds expressing gratitude for the day's lessons. This structure ensures you don't get stuck in either self-congratulation or self-criticism. Remember, the goal isn't perfect performance but continuous improvement. As Seneca wrote, I am not yet a wise man. I am still on the journey, not having yet reached the goal, but never stopping in my progress. Many practitioners find that the evening review naturally evolves into preparation for the following day. After identifying patterns and areas for improvement, you can mentally rehearse handling similar situations better tomorrow. Combining this practice with the premeditatio malorum we explored earlier. To capture the insights from your reviews, consider keeping a pattern notebook, not a detailed journal, but a simple record of recurring insights. This isn't about documenting every thought, but tracking meaningful patterns that emerge over time. A single sentence each night is often sufficient. Noticed I check my phone when conversations get uncomfortable, or realized I'm most creative early, but schedule meetings then. Sarah, an executive, used her pattern notebook to transform her leadership. After 30 days of evening reviews, I could see clearly that I was micromanaging when deadlines approached. My anxiety was being transmitted to my team, actually reducing their performance. With this awareness, I created a new approach to deadlines that gave my team more autonomy while keeping me informed. My evening reviews showed the positive impact of this change within a week. The potential pitfall of the evening review is falling into rumination, replaying events without gaining insight or direction. To avoid this, maintain firm time boundaries, 5 minutes, not 50, and always end with forward-focused questions like, how specifically will I improve tomorrow, rather than backward-focused ones like, why did I mess up again? Remember that the review is about progress, not perfection. The Stoics embraced the concept of incremental improvement, what they called prokopton, or the one who is making progress. Celebrate small victories. Did you pause before responding to a provocation? Did you maintain perspective during a stressful situation? Did you focus more on what you could control? These are significant wins worth acknowledging. Michael, who struggled with social anxiety, tracked his progress through evening reviews. Instead of focusing on whether interactions were perfect, I started noting specific behaviors, maintained eye contact during conversation, asked follow-up questions instead of just waiting to speak, stayed present instead of rehearsing responses. Tracking these specific behaviors showed me I was improving week by week, even when my feelings hadn't caught up yet. For busy individuals concerned about adding another task to their day, integrate the evening review into existing routines. Many practitioners combine it with their regular bedtime preparation. Those few minutes while brushing teeth or changing clothes can become a valuable reflection period. As Marcus Aurelius noted, people seek retreats for themselves in the countryside, by the seashore, in the hills, but this is altogether unphilosophical, when it is possible for you to retreat into yourself whenever you want. The evening review creates a powerful feedback loop in your life. Awareness leads to choice. Choice leads to improved action. Improved action leads to better results, and better results reinforce the value of continued awareness. This virtuous cycle accelerates personal growth in a way few other practices can match. What makes the Stoic evening review different from mere reflection is its balanced approach. It's neither self-congratulatory nor self-flagellating. It's a clear-eyed assessment designed to align your behavior more closely with your values over time. As Epictetus advised, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things. With consistent practice, you'll begin to notice something remarkable. The gap between events and your awareness of your reactions shrinks until you can observe yourself reacting in real time rather than only in retrospect. This growing self-awareness becomes your most valuable asset in creating a life of wisdom and tranquility. Now that you've learned how to systematically review your experiences for growth, we're ready to explore one of the most powerful and misunderstood Stoic attitudes, amor fati, the love of fate. This remarkable practice transforms obstacles into opportunities and can completely change your relationship with life's inevitable challenges. As we'll see, the most successful people throughout history have used this exact approach to turn setbacks into their greatest advantages. With the evening review giving you the power to learn systematically from each day's experiences, we're now ready to explore what might be the most transformative Stoic practice of all, amor fati, or the love of fate. This powerful mindset doesn't just help you accept obstacles, it teaches you to actually embrace them as the exact ingredients you need for growth and success. The phrase amor fati literally means love of fate, or love of what happens. It's not just accepting what happens to you, but actively embracing it, even difficulties, setbacks, and challenges. As Epictetus put it, don't seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will flow smoothly. Take a moment right now to think about something that's currently frustrating you. Maybe a project that's more complicated than expected, a relationship difficulty, or an unexpected expense. Now, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "How could this be happening for me?" Feel the subtle but significant shift in perspective? This small change in questioning represents the essence of amor fati. It's not toxic positivity or denial of difficulties. It's a profound reframing that sees obstacles not as impediments to your path, but as the path itself. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his personal journal, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Let me show you how this works in practice. Remember Thomas Edison's famous response when his laboratory burned down, destroying years of work? Instead of despair, he told his son, "Go get your mother. She'll never see a fire like this again." The next morning, surveying the ruins, he said, "There is great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew." Within 3 weeks, he delivered his first phonograph. This is amor fati in action, not just accepting fate, but actively loving it, seeing the opportunity within the obstacle. It's what the Stoics called the art of the reverse clause, transforming "this terrible thing happened" into "this thing happened that I now get to use to my advantage." You can practice this right now with something small. Think of an inconvenience you experienced recently, perhaps a delayed flight, a technology failure, or a cancelled appointment. First, notice your initial reaction. Then ask, "How could this seeming obstacle actually benefit me? What opportunities does it create that wouldn't exist otherwise?" Sarah, who missed an important flight due to traffic, used this approach. Instead of spiraling into stress about the missed meeting, I asked what this unexpected time could offer. I used the 4 hours until the next flight to finally complete a proposal I'd been procrastinating on. That proposal ended up landing our biggest client of the year, something that wouldn't have happened if everything had gone perfectly, according to my original plan. The power of amor fati comes from what psychologists call cognitive reframing, changing the story you tell about events. Research shows that this mental skill significantly impacts resilience and even physical health outcomes. When you reframe obstacles as challenges rather than threats, your body releases fewer stress hormones and more performance-enhancing chemicals. Marcus Aurelius practiced this reframing constantly. As emperor facing war, plague, and betrayal, he wrote, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This wasn't philosophical posturing, it was his practical approach to daily challenges. To make this concrete, let's try the hidden advantage exercise. Think of a current challenge you're facing. Now, write down or mentally list 3 potential advantages or opportunities that this situation creates. They can be practical benefits, character development, or new perspectives. The key is finding genuine advantages, not forced silver linings. David applied this to being laid off unexpectedly. Initially, I saw only disaster. But when I forced myself to identify potential advantages, I realized this created time to pursue certification I'd been postponing for years, allowed me to be present for my father's health challenges, and pushed me to diversify my professional network. 6 months later, I had a better position and skills I wouldn't have developed otherwise. What makes amor fati different from basic positive thinking is its basis in reality rather than wishful thinking. It doesn't deny difficulties or sugarcoat challenges. Instead, it asks, given that this is happening, how can I use it? This grounded approach makes it effective even in truly difficult circumstances. Viktor Frankl, who survived Nazi concentration camps, embodied this mindset when he wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." This isn't resignation, it's a profound form of agency that focuses on the one thing always under your control, your response. You can apply amor fati to professional setbacks through what I call the 3 lessons technique. When facing a failure or rejection, immediately identify 3 specific lessons or insights you can extract. This transforms the experience from pure loss to valuable education. Michael used this after a business venture failed. Instead of dwelling on the financial loss, I extracted 3 specific lessons. I needed more market research before investing, I performed better with a certain type of partner, and my pricing strategy needed adjustment. These lessons directly informed my next venture, which succeeded specifically because of what I learned from the failure. The paradox of control becomes evident through amor fati. By accepting circumstances you cannot change, you gain more influence over outcomes, not less. This happens because you stop wasting energy fighting reality and redirect that energy toward effective action within the parameters that exist. Jennifer experienced this paradox during a chaotic company reorganization. When I stopped resisting the changes and complaining about new leadership, I suddenly saw opportunities to contribute that were invisible before. My acceptance of the situation actually increased my influence because I was seen as a solution-focused team member rather than a resistant obstacle. Amor fati becomes particularly powerful with relationship challenges. When someone frustrates or disappoints you, try asking, "How might this difficult interaction be exactly what I need for my own growth? What quality is this situation developing in me?" Robert applied this to a challenging colleague. Instead of just seeing him as an irritating impediment, I asked how dealing with him might be developing qualities I needed. I realized his communication style was forcing me to be more precise, assertive, and patient, exactly the skills I needed to develop for an upcoming leadership role. Our interactions became a kind of training ground rather than just a daily annoyance. To build this mindset systematically, practice what the Stoics called voluntary hardship, intentionally seeking controlled difficulties. This might mean taking cold showers, fasting for a day, or committing to difficult conversations you'd normally avoid. These self-imposed challenges build the mental muscle that sees difficulty as opportunity. Anna incorporated this practice weekly. Every Friday, I choose one deliberately challenging activity, whether physical, intellectual, or social. Each voluntary hardship has strengthened my ability to embrace unexpected challenges. When our home flooded last year, I found myself automatically looking for opportunities rather than just lamenting our situation. This approach transforms even health challenges. While never minimizing serious conditions, amor fati asks, given this reality, how can I use it to live more meaningfully? Stephen Hawking exemplified this when he said, "My expectations were reduced to 0 when I was 21. Everything since then has been a bonus." His physical limitations became the backdrop for his extraordinary mental focus. Elena applied this mindset to a chronic pain condition. Rather than just fighting against my limitations, I asked how they might serve me. My need for careful pacing has made me more deliberate about priorities. My heightened awareness of my body's signals has improved my decision-making. I've developed deeper empathy. While I wouldn't choose this condition, I can choose to use it as a catalyst for growth. A powerful variation of Amor Fati is the 3 benefits exercise. When facing any challenge, identify 1 benefit for yourself, 1 for others in your life, and 1 for your future self. This comprehensive perspective often reveals value that remains hidden when focusing solely on immediate discomfort. Thomas applied this after being required to relocate for work. The benefit for me was developing adaptability and confidence in new environments. The benefit for others was that my children experienced different cultures and developed resilience. The benefit for my future self was an expanded professional network that later created opportunities I couldn't have anticipated. Seeing these layered benefits transformed my experience of the move. The distinction between resistance and flow is central to Amor Fati. Resistance creates friction and suffering. Flow creates momentum and opportunity. As Epictetus advised, do not seek to have events happen as you want them to, but instead want them to happen as they do happen, and your life will go well. This doesn't mean passive resignation. It means accepting the reality of your starting point before taking action. It's the difference between swimming against the current versus using the current's energy to help you reach your destination. James applied this distinction to a project that lost key funding. Initially, I wasted weeks fighting against the new constraints, trying to make the original plan work. When I finally accepted our new reality and asked, "What's possible now?" we developed a streamlined approach that ended up being more innovative and sustainable than our original concept. The constraint itself forced creativity that abundance hadn't required. For immediate implementation, start with 3 challenging situations in your current life. For each one, ask, if I loved what was happening right now, if I saw it as exactly what I needed, how would I approach it differently? What opportunities would become visible? Maria used this with 3 simultaneous challenges. I applied this to a difficult boss, unexpected expenses, and a health setback. In each case, shifting from "why is this happening" to "how is this useful" revealed specific actions I could take that I hadn't seen before. The problems didn't disappear, but my relationship with them transformed completely. Remember that Amor Fati isn't about pretending everything is wonderful. It's about taking whatever materials life gives you and using them to build something meaningful. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." Now that you've learned how to transform any obstacle into an opportunity, we're ready to explore one of the most misunderstood Stoic practices: memento mori, the contemplation of mortality. Far from being morbid, this specific exercise of contemplating our finite nature has the power to instantly clarify your priorities and awaken an appreciation for life that few other practices can achieve. Now that you can transform any obstacle into opportunity, let's explore one of the most powerful yet misunderstood Stoic practices. A technique that might initially seem dark, but actually floods your life with meaning and clarity. The ancient Romans called it memento mori, remember that you will die. Before you dismiss this as morbid, consider how the awareness of life's finite nature might be the most powerful priority clarifier you'll ever discover. Have you ever had that surreal experience at a funeral where suddenly all your daily concerns, the email you didn't answer, the minor slight from a colleague, the scratch on your car, seem almost laughably insignificant? In those rare moments when mortality becomes tangible, our priorities instantly realign. The Stoics discovered you don't need to wait for those wake-up calls. You can intentionally create that clarity any time. You could leave life right now, Marcus Aurelius reminded himself. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Notice he didn't write this to depress himself, but to inspire focused, meaningful living. Think about how differently you'd approach today if you knew with certainty it was one of your last. What would suddenly matter? What would instantly become irrelevant? Let's try a quick exercise. Close your eyes for 10 seconds and imagine you've just been told you have only 1 year left to live. Nothing painful, just a clear endpoint. When you open your eyes, ask yourself, what would I focus on today if this were true? What did you notice? Most people report an immediate mental house cleaning. Petty resentments, trivial worries, and meaningless tasks simply fall away. Important relationships, meaningful work, and authentic experiences suddenly stand in sharp relief. This clarity isn't depressing, it's energizing. This is why research from the University of Kentucky shows that regular contemplation of mortality is linked to greater generosity, more environmental responsibility, and higher overall life satisfaction. As Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing." But the modern world fights against this awareness at every turn. We've created entire industries dedicated to avoiding any thought of death. We use euphemisms, hide the aging process, and generally pretend we have unlimited time. The result? We postpone what matters, waste precious hours on trivialities, and design lives we don't actually want to live. Emma, a marketing executive, incorporated a 5-minute memento mori reflection every Sunday evening. I simply ask, if this were my last year, would I be satisfied with how I'm spending my days? This one question has completely transformed my calendar. I've eliminated 20 hours of weekly meetings that weren't serving any real purpose, and finally started the community project I've been postponing for years. The Stoics practiced memento mori not as abstract philosophy, but as practical life design. They kept reminders of mortality, not to be morbid, but to maintain perspective. Some kept small symbols on their desks, others incorporated brief daily reflections. The point wasn't to become obsessed with death, but to use its clarifying power to live more intentionally. One of the most effective techniques is what I call the 5 regrets exercise, inspired by palliative care nurse Bronnie Ware's research with dying patients. Take 60 seconds right now to consider, if you were at the end of your life looking back, what would you regret not doing, saying, or becoming? What risks would you wish you'd taken? What authentic truths would you wish you'd expressed? Did any specific regrets come to mind? That awareness is incredibly valuable. It's showing you exactly where your current path might be misaligned with what truly matters to you. Unlike vague New Year's resolutions, insights from mortality awareness tend to point toward meaningful, substantial life adjustments. Robert applied this exercise when considering a career change. I realized I wasn't just slightly dissatisfied with my job. I was building a life I would profoundly regret. The mortality perspective cut through years of rationalization in about 5 minutes. 6 months later, I'd transitioned to work aligned with my values, and the constant background anxiety I'd been carrying disappeared. What makes memento mori different from morbid preoccupation is its purpose. You're not thinking about death to become fearful or depressed. You're using this awareness as a tool for prioritization and meaning. As Epictetus asked his students, keep death and exile before your eyes each day, along with everything that seems terrible, and you will never have a base thought, nor will you have excessive desire. The obituary exercise makes this practice even more concrete. Spend 5 minutes writing the obituary you would want to have. Not a fantasy, but an honest reflection of a life well lived according to your deepest values. What contributions would you have made? What qualities would people remember about you? What difference would you have made in others' lives? This isn't about accomplishments or status. The most meaningful obituaries rarely focus on career achievements or material success. They highlight qualities of character, depth of relationships, and positive impact on others. Writing your ideal obituary provides immediate clarity about what truly matters to you. Thomas used this exercise when facing a major life decision. I was torn between a prestigious promotion that required 60-hour weeks and a lateral move that offered more flexibility for family time. Writing my ideal obituary made the decision obvious. Nowhere in it did I mention corporate titles, but my relationships with my children appeared repeatedly. The clarity was immediate and overwhelming. The final perspective filter applies this awareness to daily decisions. When facing choices, large or small, ask yourself, will this matter when I'm on my deathbed? This simple question instantly filters the essential from the trivial. Should you hold that grudge? Worry about that comment? Stay in that soul-crushing job? Postpone that meaningful conversation? The final perspective gives immediate clarity. Sarah integrated this filter into her daily life. I installed a small hourglass on my desk. Before reacting to any email that triggers me or making any significant decision, I turn it over and ask, will this matter at the end? It's amazing how many things that seemed critically important simply dissolve under this perspective. I'm more focused on what actually matters and far less reactive to everything else. The paradox of mortality awareness is that by acknowledging life's finite nature, you don't become depressed, you become more fully alive. Research shows that people who maintain healthy awareness of mortality report greater joy in ordinary experiences, more gratitude, and less anxiety about trivial matters. As Marcus Aurelius noted, perfection of character is this: to live each day as if it were your last, without frenzy, without apathy, without pretense. This isn't about creating panic or urgency. It's about developing what the Stoics called the view from above, seeing your life in its complete context. From this perspective, you can distinguish between the truly meaningful and the merely urgent, between authentic values and social expectations. The 3-timeline technique makes this practical. When making decisions, consider them from 3 timeframes. How will this look 1 month from now, 1 year from now, and at the end of your life? This temporal perspective prevents both short-term thinking and choices made from momentary emotional states. Daniel used this approach with financial decisions. I was working myself to exhaustion for a certain income level, justifying it as securing my future. The 3-timeline perspective showed me I was sacrificing my only guaranteed time, the present, for a future that isn't guaranteed at all. I've since redesigned my work around what brings meaning now while still being responsible for tomorrow. The irony? I'm actually more financially successful because my work has more meaning and authenticity. The memento mori perspective is particularly powerful for overcoming procrastination and the someday syndrome. When you clearly see that someday isn't guaranteed, you become much more intentional about prioritizing what truly matters. What meaningful project, conversation, or experience are you postponing to some indefinite future that may never arrive? Elena applied this awareness to her writing aspirations. I'd been saying someday about my book for 12 years. The mortality perspective made me realize that someday is a fantasy. There is only today repeated. I started writing for 30 minutes each morning. 11 months later, my manuscript was complete. The someday syndrome had been conquered by the simple awareness that my days are numbered. To avoid the trap of urgency without purpose, couple memento mori with the question of meaning. Given that my time is limited, what is the most meaningful way to spend today? This prevents both procrastination and frantic activity without direction. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters. The perfect day practice applies this philosophy practically. Instead of waiting for some future time to live fully, ask each morning, if this were my last year, what would make today feel complete and well lived? Then design your day around those elements, even in small ways. This shifts focus from postponement to present meaning. James incorporated this practice into his daily routine. Instead of saving all meaningful experiences for vacations or weekends, I ask, what would make today well lived? Sometimes it's as simple as a thoughtful conversation with my son, 15 minutes with a book that inspires me, or expressing appreciation to someone. These small, meaningful moments have completely transformed my experience of ordinary days. The perspective of mortality doesn't diminish the value of long-term projects or goals. Rather, it ensures those pursuits align with what truly matters to you. The Stoics were accomplished, ambitious people who built, created, and led, but they did so from a place of clarity about what deserved their limited time and energy. For lasting implementation, consider creating what some practitioners call memento mori moments. Brief, regular reminders integrated into your daily life. Some use transitions between activities to pause and realign with what matters. Others set subtle reminders on their phones or watches. The goal isn't constant preoccupation, but regular recalibration. Michael uses technology for this purpose. I've set my phone to ask, is this worthy of your limited time? Whenever I try to open social media apps, this tiny moment of mortality awareness has saved me countless hours of mindless scrolling and redirected that time toward relationships and projects I deeply value. Remember that memento mori isn't about living with anxiety or fear. It's about living with clarity and purpose. As Seneca wrote, let us order our minds as if we had come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's account every day. This daily balancing creates a life of presence, meaning, and intentional choice, rather than distraction, drift, and regret. Now that you understand how mortality awareness clarifies priorities, we're ready to explore the Stoic practice that develops unshakable willpower based on values. It's called prohairesis, the discipline of the will, and it allows you to maintain commitment to your principles even when circumstances conspire against you. With mortality awareness now clarifying your priorities, let's explore the foundation of lasting character strength, what the Stoics called prohairesis, or the discipline of the will. This powerful practice reveals how to maintain your principles even when everything around you seems designed to break them. Think about the last time you made a firm decision, perhaps to be more patient with your family, to avoid workplace gossip, or to stick to healthier habits, only to find that resolution crumbling when circumstances became challenging. You're not alone. Studies show that 92% of New Year's resolutions fail, not because we lack desire, but because we lack a system for maintaining our will when external pressures mount. Epictetus, who began life as a slave yet maintained extraordinary inner freedom, understood this challenge intimately. Make it your study, he advised, to respond to every impression with, "You are just an impression and not at all what you appear to be." What he meant was that external events don't have to dictate your responses. You can choose your actions based on your values rather than impulses or pressures. This discipline of the will isn't about rigid self-control or white-knuckling through challenges. It's about developing what I call values-based willpower rather than force-based willpower. The difference is crucial. Force-based willpower depletes quickly because it depends on mental energy. Values-based willpower actually strengthens with use because it connects to deeper meaning. Let me show you how this works in practice. Take a moment right now to think of a recent situation where you acted against your better judgment. Perhaps you lost your temper, procrastinated on something important, or gave in to a temptation you later regretted. Now ask yourself, in that moment, what immediate feeling was I following, and what deeper value was I leaving behind? This simple question reveals the mechanism behind most willpower failures. We typically abandon our principles not because we forget them, but because immediate emotional impulses temporarily overshadow our deeper values. The key to prohairesis is making those deeper values so vivid and compelling that they can compete with momentary urges. The first practical technique is what I call hierarchical values clarification. Take 5 minutes to list the values that matter most to you, perhaps honesty, courage, family, creativity, or wisdom. Then arrange them in order of priority. This seemingly simple exercise creates tremendous clarity when facing difficult choices. Daniel, a manager who struggled with people-pleasing, transformed his leadership using this technique. I realized I valued authentic communication above comfort. When I had to give difficult feedback, I reminded myself that my commitment to honesty outranked my desire for easy interactions. This clarity made tough conversations not easy but straightforward. I knew which value needed to guide my actions. The next powerful practice is the internal model technique. The Stoics would vividly imagine their ideal self, the person who embodied their highest values, and regularly visualize this model in action. Before facing challenging situations, they would mentally rehearse how this ideal version of themselves would respond. Try this right now with a challenge you're currently facing. Close your eyes for 10 seconds and imagine your best self, the version of you that embodies your core values, handling this situation with wisdom and integrity. What specifically would that version of you do? When you open your eyes, you've created a mental template that can guide your actions. Research shows that this kind of vivid mental rehearsal activates many of the same neural pathways as actual practice, essentially training your brain for values-based responses. Emma used this technique to transform her relationship with social media. Before checking notifications, I quickly visualize my ideal self, focused, intentional, and present. This takes literally 3 seconds, but completely changes how I engage online. Instead of reactive scrolling, I maintain awareness of my deeper values around attention and meaningful connection. One of the greatest challenges to our willpower is social pressure. We may have clear values when alone, but they can dissolve quickly under external influence. The Stoics developed what I call value anchors, specific phrases or mental images that instantly reconnect you to your principles when under pressure. Marcus Aurelius used this approach regularly, writing reminders like, "When faced with people's bad behavior, turn around and ask when you have acted like that." These anchors kept him connected to his values, even amidst the extraordinary pressures of imperial leadership. Create your own value anchor by completing this sentence. When I feel pressured to compromise, I will remember that I am someone who. Make it specific, memorable, and connected to your deepest identity. This becomes your touchstone when external pressures mount. Thomas created an anchor for workplace integrity. When tempted to cut corners under deadline pressure, I remind myself I am someone who does right even when it's difficult. This simple phrase has guided dozens of decisions where the easier path would have violated my standards. The red lines practice takes this concept further by explicitly defining your non-negotiable boundaries in advance. These aren't rigid rules, but clarity about where your deepest values require you to stand firm regardless of circumstances. Take 30 seconds right now to identify one red line in your professional life and one in your personal relationships. Boundaries you will not cross regardless of pressure or convenience. This clarity prevents the sliding scale of compromise that often erodes our principles gradually. Sarah, who faced ethical challenges in her industry, established clear red lines. I decided I would never misrepresent data to clients, even when pressured by leadership. Having this boundary predefined meant I didn't have to deliberate in high-pressure moments. The decision was already made. This clarity actually earned me respect, even from those initially pushing for compromise. This approach proves particularly valuable in workplace ethics. Consider how often professionals face subtle pressures to compromise, fudging numbers, hiding information, or taking credit for others' work. Without predefined values and boundaries, these situations become ethical quicksand. Robert applied proheresis when asked to present misleading information to investors. Instead of agonizing in the moment, I referred to my predefined values hierarchy, where honesty ranked above advancement. The decision wasn't easy, but it was clear. I proposed an alternative approach that maintained integrity while addressing business needs. This solution actually created more investor confidence in our transparency. The Stoics understood that our relationship with willpower typically suffers from a fundamental mistake. We treat it as a matter of force rather than identity. The most powerful question isn't, how can I make myself do this? But, what kind of person do I want to be? This identity contrast technique is remarkably effective. When facing temptation or pressure, ask yourself, which version of myself will I become if I make this choice? Visualize the two potential paths, one aligned with your values, one with momentary impulse, and their natural consequences. Michael used this approach to overcome a procrastination habit. When tempted to delay important work, I'd ask myself, am I becoming the focused, impactful professional I want to be? Or am I becoming someone who sacrifices long-term success for short-term comfort? Framing it as an identity choice rather than a willpower battle completely transformed my motivation. For habit change, the Stoics employed what modern psychologists call implementation intentions, specific plans that link situations to predetermined responses. Rather than vague intentions like be healthier, they created explicit formulas. When situation X arises, I will do Y. Research shows this approach can triple your success rate with habit change because it bypasses the need for in-the-moment willpower. You're essentially programming your autopilot response. Create an implementation intention right now for a habit you'd like to strengthen. Complete this sentence. When I encounter specific trigger, I will specific action aligned with my values. The more precise, the more effective. Elena transformed her digital habits with this approach. Instead of a vague intention to use my phone less, I created specific implementations. When I finish a task, I will take 3 deep breaths before checking my phone. When I feel the urge to check social media during work, I will drink water and refocus for 5 minutes. These predefined responses dramatically reduced my digital distraction. The public commitment technique leverages our social nature to strengthen resolve. The Stoics recognize that publicly declaring our intentions creates healthy accountability. This isn't about seeking approval, but about aligning our public and private selves. You don't need grand announcements. Simply telling one trusted person about a value-based commitment significantly increases your likelihood of following through. The key is choosing someone who embodies the values you're working to strengthen. James used this approach for a writing project. After years of private promises to write consistently, I told 3 friends whose creative discipline I respected. Just knowing they might ask about my progress created enough accountability to establish a daily writing habit that's now produced 200 pages of my book. What makes Stoic willpower unique is its focus on internal dialogue. The Stoics carefully examined how they spoke to themselves, recognizing that our inner conversation shapes our choices. They developed what I call mentor dialogue, speaking to yourself as a wise friend would, with both compassion and truth. Notice your current inner dialogue around challenges. Is it harsh, defeatist, enabling? Try reframing it as a conversation with your wisest self. What would that voice say about your current situation and choices? Sarah transformed her relationship with exercise through this technique. Instead of my usual inner critic, "You're so lazy," or enabler, "You deserve to skip today," I developed a mentor voice. "You're building consistency, not perfection. What small step serves your long-term well-being today?" This compassionate but honest dialogue completely changed my approach to fitness. The ultimate test of prohairesis is maintaining integrity when no one is watching. The Stoics believed true character was revealed not in public actions, but in private choices. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it, regardless of whether anyone would know." Consider an area of your life where only you know if you're upholding your standards. How might strengthening integrity in these private moments ripple outward to your public character? Thomas applied this to his content creation. "I decided the research for my presentations would be thorough, whether or not anyone could verify my sources. This private standard gradually transformed my public work, bringing a depth and credibility that people sensed without knowing exactly why. Private integrity became a public strength." To integrate prohairesis into daily life, create what I call value alignment moments. Brief pauses throughout your day to check if your actions align with your principles. These can be as simple as asking before decisions, "Is this choice aligned with who I want to be?" Elena incorporated these moments into her daily transitions. "Before entering my home after work, I take 15 seconds in the car to align with my values of presence and patience with my family." This tiny practice has transformed my evenings from reactive exhaustion to intentional engagement. Remember that prohairesis isn't about perfection. The Stoics acknowledge that we all fall short of our ideals. The key is returning to your values after missteps rather than abandoning them. As Epictetus advised, "If you have assumed a character beyond your strength, you have both played a poor figure in that and neglected one that is within your powers." Now that you've learned how to develop unshakable willpower based on your deepest values, we're ready to integrate all these practices into a complete system for your daily life. In our final chapter, I'll reveal the 30-day method that has transformed thousands of lives. A simple approach that incorporates these techniques into your routine without requiring extra hours in your already busy day. Now that you possess these individual Stoic practices, it's time to integrate them into a comprehensive system for daily life. One that doesn't require adding hours to your already full schedule. What I'm about to share is the 30-day implementation method that has transformed thousands of lives, creating lasting mental resilience through small, consistent actions. Many people fail with philosophical practices not because the ideas aren't powerful, but because they try changing everything at once. As Epictetus wisely noted, "No great thing is created suddenly." The most effective approach combines these practices progressively, building your mental strength like a muscle, through graduated challenge and consistent repetition. Let me show you exactly how to implement these principles over the next 30 days, creating a system so natural it eventually becomes your default operating mode rather than something you consciously practice. The first 10 days focus on awareness, simply noticing your current mental patterns without trying to change them yet. Begin with the most fundamental Stoic practice, the dichotomy of control. Each evening, take just 2 minutes to mentally sort the day's events into what was within your control and what wasn't. Don't judge yourself during this phase. Simply observe. How did you react when someone cut you off in traffic? What happened inside when that meeting got rescheduled at the last minute? When your partner made that comment, where did your mind immediately go? James, who struggled with workplace anxiety, was surprised by what he discovered. In the first week, I realized I was spending 80% of my mental energy on things completely outside my control: my company's financial health, my colleagues' opinions, even the weather affecting my commute. Just noticing this pattern was eye-opening. To support this awareness phase, set a simple phone reminder for 7 in the evening with the message, "What's within my control right now?" This small prompt interrupts autopilot and creates a moment of conscious choice. Each night, spend just 60 seconds writing a single sentence about what you observed. Don't make it elaborate. Marcus Aurelius wrote his reflections in military camps between battles. If he could maintain this practice under those conditions, you can certainly find 60 seconds. During days 11 through 20, we'll add 3 more practices: the evening review, mental preparation, and stoic gratitude. Establish a simple 10-minute sequence. 3 minutes reviewing your day without judgment. 3 minutes contemplating something you value that could be lost. 4 minutes formulating a specific question for your brain to work on during sleep. This is where you'll likely encounter resistance. Your mind might protest, "This isn't working," or "I'm too tired tonight." This resistance is precisely the mental muscle being developed. Just as physical exercise meets resistance from the body, mental exercise meets resistance from habitual thinking. Rebecca, who implemented these practices while managing a team during a company reorganization, shares, "Week 2 was hardest. I kept wanting to skip the evening practice. By week 3, I noticed I wasn't bringing work stress home anymore. By week 4, my team commented on my newfound calmness during chaotic situations. The practices that felt awkward initially had become my mental foundation." Michael, who had taken anxiety medication for years, experienced more subtle changes. The transformation wasn't that anxiety disappeared magically. It was that I developed a different relationship with it. I could observe it arriving and not be completely overtaken. After 45 days, my doctor reduced my medication for the first time in 6 years. For days 21 through 30, incorporate the final 2 practices, memento mori and the cosmic perspective. Your complete 15-minute evening routine now includes 3 minutes for the dichotomy of control, 3 minutes for the evening review, 2 minutes for stoic gratitude, 2 minutes for memento mori, 3 minutes for the cosmic perspective, 2 minutes for mental preparation. By this phase, the practices begin naturally blending together. You're no longer doing Stoicism. You're simply operating from a different mental framework. It's like learning to drive. Initially, each movement requires conscious attention. After a month, you drive while conversing and listening to music. The practice becomes second nature. To make this sustainable, connect these practices to existing habits, what psychologists call habit stacking. Attach your Stoic practices to something you already do consistently. Perhaps during your evening shower you practice the dichotomy of control. While brushing your teeth, you conduct your evening review. These contextual triggers strengthen consistency tremendously. Elena integrated her practice this way. "I do my dichotomy of control while washing dishes after dinner, mentally sorting the day's events as I sort the silverware. The physical activity actually helps me think more clearly, and connecting it to something I do every day ensures I never miss practice." For those concerned about finding time, remember that these practices don't require adding activities to your day, but rather bringing awareness to what you're already doing. While waiting for your coffee to brew, practice the cosmic perspective. While commuting, implement amor fati with any delay or frustration. These stoic moments throughout your day compound powerfully over time. To track your progress without becoming obsessive, create what I call a Procopton journal, named after the Stoic term for one who is making progress. This isn't a detailed diary, but a simple record of insights and patterns. A single sentence each day is sufficient. Noticed, I react defensively to email criticism, or found peace by accepting a delayed flight I couldn't control. Thomas, who initially doubted these practices would help his chronic stress, was surprised by his journal's revelations. After 28 days, I reviewed my notes and saw clear patterns I'd never noticed before, specific triggers for my anxiety, particular thinking traps I fell into repeatedly. These weren't random stress episodes, but predictable reactions I could now anticipate and reframe. For those who prefer digital support, several excellent apps can help maintain consistency. Daily Stoic, Stoa, and Waking Up all offer guided Stoic meditations and reminders. Technology that typically fragments attention can be repurposed to support your mental training. Remember that implementation is highly personal. Some practices will resonate more strongly with you than others. After completing the 30-day system, feel free to customize your ongoing practice around the techniques that provide the greatest benefit for your specific challenges. For parents wondering how to adapt these practices for family life, consider creating what I call Stoic moments with children. When facing disappointment, gently ask, "Is this within our control?" When encountering challenges, model asking, "How might this obstacle be an opportunity?" These micro-lessons, delivered without philosophical terminology, plant powerful seeds of resilience. Sarah integrated Stoicism with her children through simple language. When my son is frustrated about rain-canceling outdoor plans, I ask, "Can we control the weather?" Then we focus on what we can control, our indoor activities and our attitude. He's 7. But he's already learning to direct his energy toward what he can influence rather than fighting reality. For workplace implementation, consider creating perspective prompts for your team. One executive I work with begins meetings with a 30-second dichotomy of control exercise. Before we discuss challenges, let's quickly identify what aspects are within our control and which aren't. This simple practice has transformed his team's problem-solving effectiveness. As you progress beyond the initial 30 days, you might encounter what I call the plateau of practice, a period where benefits seem to stabilize. This is normal and indicates readiness for deeper application. Consider exploring advanced Stoic practices, weekend silence retreats, deeper study of original Stoic texts, deliberate discomfort practices, application to specific life domains like finances, parenting, or leadership. Robert deepened his practice through quarterly discomfort weekends. 4 times a year, I spend a weekend deliberately embracing mild discomfort, cold showers, fasting for 24 hours, sleeping on the floor. These controlled challenges have dramatically increased my resilience for life's unexpected difficulties. To maintain motivation during challenging periods, create a Stoic council, a mental board of advisors consisting of historical Stoics and personal role models. When facing difficult decisions, imagine consulting this council. What would Marcus Aurelius advise in this situation? How would my grandfather handle this challenge? This practice provides perspective when emotions might otherwise cloud judgment. For lasting transformation, integrate what I call legacy reflection into your practice. Every month, ask yourself, am I becoming the kind of person I would admire? Are my daily actions aligned with the values I want to be remembered for? This regular alignment check prevents drift from your deepest principles. Maria uses this practice on the first day of each month. I ask if my daily habits are creating the life I want to be living. This simple question has prompted more meaningful adjustments than years of vague goals and resolutions. It cuts through rationalization and excuses to what truly matters. Remember that Stoicism isn't about reaching some perfect mental state where you never feel negative emotions. The goal is developing a healthier relationship with the full spectrum of human experience. Success isn't measured by the absence of challenges, but by your improved response to them. Imagine receiving a letter from yourself 1 year in the future. What might it say? Perhaps something like, "Dear past self, thank you for beginning those stoic practices that evening, even though you were tired and skeptical. The person I am today isn't someone who never feels fear or anxiety. That would be unrealistic. I'm someone who has developed an entirely new relationship with those emotions. The problems haven't disappeared, but my capacity to face them has grown exponentially. Remember those restless nights, tossing in bed, worried about things you couldn't control? They seem so distant now. The most valuable gift hasn't just been peace of mind, but clarity of purpose. When you remove the noise of constant anxiety, you can hear what truly matters to you. Start today. Not tomorrow, not when you're less busy or less stressed. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, or in this case with 15 minutes before sleep. Tonight, when you place your head on the pillow, you have a choice. Continue in the same mental patterns you've followed until now, or take the first step toward the mental fortitude that Stoics developed and that's available to you. What will you choose?